Okay, are you sitting comfortably in your reality? Let's see if we can bend it a little for you. Now, having established the reality of the Bible as an actual, verifiable and highly traceable historical and archaeological record by all historical and archaeological standards, in other words, its documents were written when, as and by who they claim, and their accounts are a part of actual world reality, I've called the first reality bender Time Lord Theology, because it forces us to confront the undeniable reality that there actually is somebody who controls time itself, or at least time as we know it. We have all heard the story of the crucifixion of Jesus. It's recorded in quite vivid detail in the Bible by many of the eyewitnesses to it. Now, you can't hang on a cross by your arms because you would not be able to breathe properly and would quickly suffocate and die. That's why they broke the legs of the other two who were crucified alongside Jesus. They needed them to die quickly because the Sabbath was about to start at sundown. Jesus, however, was already dead, so no bones in his body were broken, which is, as was prophesied in Psalm 34 by King David over 1,000 years earlier. So for 6 long, grueling, pain-racked hours, Jesus resolutely stood on the nail in his feet. Now, Jesus for certain was no wimp, but displayed incredible courage, willpower, endurance and strength to the very end. Jesus decided when he would give up his spirit, not the Romans and not the Jewish hierarchy. But when Jesus did decide to commend his spirit to his Father, he said something beforehand that has, for some very odd reason, puzzled many ever since. He said, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which is actually Aramaic, the native tongue that Jesus spoke, remembering that Greek was the common international language of the time, but not the native language of Israel. Now, as we all know now, it means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Now, many think it is a cry of despair, a lamentation, a last desperation, but it's not. Jesus wanted to tell us something he wanted us to remember, but could not do so after hours of torture and 6 hours nailed to a cross. So he made sure it was written down beforehand, kind of like a last will and testament, as it were. Jesus was in fact, in reality, quoting somebody, himself. What was it he wanted us to know? He wanted us to know his final thoughts from the cross itself. But when did he write those down? How could he write them down before he even went to the cross? Well, he did something that will blow your reality out of the water, if you are prepared to open your eyes to the true reality. Not only did he write them down before he went to the cross, he wrote them down over 1,015 years before he was even born. He wrote them down from the pen of his ancestor, King David, who died in 1015 BC. He wrote them down in one of the Psalms that had been part of the Jewish scriptures that had existed, been carefully copied, reverently preserved, and solemnly read out countless times throughout all the synagogues of Israel for hundreds of years. Psalm 22 is the thoughts of Jesus from the cross, written not only before Jesus was born, but before even the Roman Empire was born, and before even the Greek Empire was born. And yet there is the crucifixion foretold in vivid and quite miraculous detail, as seen and experienced and felt by Jesus himself. But how could David have possibly known such a thing unless somebody had already experienced and knew firsthand the death of Jesus on the cross told him? For it's not the experience of David, who was never nailed to a cross, but the experience of Jesus himself that is foretold. It can only be by somebody for whom past, present and future are all one. Somebody beyond even time itself. Somebody who is in control of time itself. Somebody who could both be in David's time, around 1020 BC, and also 1050 years later, in 32 AD, when Jesus was crucified. Remember, neither Jesus nor his disciples chose his time, place, or manner of death. These things were chosen by the enemies of Christ and the enemies of the Lord himself. Psalm 22 begins with these words, my God, why have you forsaken me?